God isn't into improvement plans. Hey, I'm Brian Tome. Welcome to My Garage Bible Study. God isn't into improvement plans. What are we talking about here today? Well, God's certainly into us spiritually growing, that's for sure. But sometimes we've got to turn things back to the very, very beginning. And specifically, when we start our walk with God, it's a brand new thing, not an improvement thing. I'm still working on my 1978 CJ7. Will be for quite some time. About ready to take this tub off to get it out to bodywork and paint, rather. And the last thing to take off before I do this is this steering column, the steering wheel. It's mostly disconnected, but I've got some bolts that I'm soaking with Cruel oil to have penetrating oil to be able to get them out. And the steering column, I have no idea how good it is. I've never driven this before, but it just got to come out for me to get this off. I'm going to go through all the bushings and all the contacts and connections inside that thing, all that stuff. But the thing about the steering wheel is it basically takes where the car goes, where the vehicle goes. Point that way, it goes that way. Point this way, it goes this way. It's a metaphor for where we're going in life. And there are these adjustments that we make to where we're going in life, but the first adjustment isn't an adjustment, it's an utter overhaul that actually comes from God. In the book of Ephesians, which we're going to look at today, Ephesians chapter 4, where do I want to start here? Let's start with verse 20. Paul has written the book of Ephesians, and he's helping them understand what new life looks like. He's helping them understand how everyone else in the world thinks this is the way life works, but I say to you, this is the way life works. When you're in a relationship with God, this is how it works. Let's go ahead and read it. And here's what it says. But that is not the way you learn Christ. Assuming that you have heard about him and were taught in him in the truth that is in Jesus. It's kind of a little snarky here. The things you're doing, that's what you've not learned about Jesus. That is, if you've actually known him, if you've actually been affected and impacted by him. Very snarky here by the Apostle Paul. He says this, the truth is in Jesus to put off your old self, which belongs to your former manner of life and is corrupt through deceitful desires. To put off your old self, not to improve your old self, not to have a growth plan for your old self, but to put off your old self. When we come to know Christ, there is a growth process that we go through. Actually, the Bible's word for that is the sanctification process. It's when we become more and more like Christ. We are sanctified by him. But there's not a growth process when you come to know Jesus. There is an elimination process. It's not like, hey, I'm going this way to just serve my bank account and serve whatever brand of spirituality that worked for me before, or serve the American dream. And now I'm just gonna tweak it a little. I'm gonna steer it over here towards Jesus. I'm gonna do some Jesus, some church stuff, and I might veer back there from time to time. And then I come back here. No, that's not the metaphor that the Bible gives us. You take off the old self. You don't just put a new coat of paint over this thing. You take it off. You take off the old self. You got to get down to the frame of who you are, which is my next step in this process. You have to take it off. Be above and beyond where you are right now. Take off the old self. The old self that's corrupted by all of its desires that the world puts into us. What kind of desires? Well, desires that you're number one. The desires that tell us that life is about me being happy. No, it's about making God happy. That's what life is about. Desires that, like, most important thing is my future. No, the most important thing is the future of God's will. That's the most important thing. Desires like, I have to be sexually satisfied, whatever I am, gay, straight, whatever I am, I have to be sexually satisfied. No, you don't have to be sexually satisfied. You have to be sexually sanctified. You have to have your sex life be in line with what God wants you if you want the new self. The old self tells us that we can't live without sex. The old self tells us that we can't live without being happy. The old self tells us that if we have the money, we spend the money. Or the old self says we have the money, we save the money, and we don't give away any money. The old self just justifies the decisions we make. The old self finds podcasts and finds authors and finds news stations that just approve of, and pour fuel onto the beliefs and desires that we have right now. That's what the old self is always about itself all the time. It might look nicer than some other people's old self. The old self that you have might be a little smarter in how it presents itself to the world, but the old self is always about itself. It's not about God. Its ultimate highest goal is the fulfillment of self, not the fulfillment of the will of God and the fulfillment of having a relationship with Him. So that's what Paul says. No, you're not supposed to be dealing with all these morality things. You're supposed to be eliminating the old self, my old identity, my old habit of thinking, the old carriage I used to run. You eliminate that. You get rid of your old self and you take on the new self. Let's see what it says here. It's not the way you learn Christ, assuming you've heard about Him and were taught by Him as the truth is in Jesus. To put off your old self, which belongs to your former manner of life and is corrupt through its deceitful desires. See, those deceitful desires, we don't even know that we're self-centered. We don't even know that we're trying to block out truth. We don't even know that we're following a false deity, a false worldview, a false philosophy. We don't even know that because the old self deceives us. No, you're basically a good person. No, you basically go the right way. No, you're basically trending the right direction. We're deceived. The heart is deceived about itself. Paul continues. And to be renewed in the spirit of your minds, and to put on the new self, created after the likeness of God in true righteousness and holiness. So, when we put on the new self, or we are being renewed in the mind, this in the original Greek is very clear. It's an ongoing active thing. When we come to Christ, we get a new self. We get an identity of Jesus. So when God looks at us, He doesn't see the deceitful sins of our past or even the deceitful sins of today. He sees the holy, righteous acts of Jesus. We see His righteousness in us. My sin is transferred, spiritually, wirelessly transferred to the back of Jesus while He's on the cross. And Jesus' righteousness is spiritually, wirelessly transferred to my heart. So when God looks at me, He sees not a person who's grabbing the wheel. Jesus, take the wheel. He doesn't see someone who's taking the wheel. He's seeing somebody who actually possesses the Word of God, the righteousness of God in me. That's what He sees. That's amazing. So what I do, what I should be doing, what you should be doing every day, is making a decision to put on the new self. Get up in the morning, I put on the new self, not the old self. I put the new self on, and I renew my mind. I think the right things. I read the right things. You're renewing your right mind right now, tuning into Garage Bible Study. I'm giving you things that are just true and are from God. And it comes against all the clutter that the rest of the world puts into us. We need to be in Bible studies like this. We need to be reading the Bible on our own. We need to be listening to podcasts and being around people who give us good stuff. Doesn't mean that everything you watch or listen to has to be Christian. I know it isn't for me. That's for darn sure. I'm watching Daredevil right now. Not bad. Pretty good. But Daredevil isn't going to help me renew my mind much either. Daredevil's not that bad. Punisher, he's pretty bad. But I have to go through a process of renewing my mind, putting myself in a place where I'm being restored, choosing the attitude of Christ instead of the attitude of the world, choosing the new spirit that Jesus puts into me instead of the old spirit of deception. That's why I'm saying God is not about you gradually growing. He's about giving you a new self. And then every day you choose that new self, you renew your mind, and that's how you have a powerful life. That's how we make the right decisions. That's how we understand the heart of God. That's how we have a prayer life that works. That's how we have a spiritual power that goes through us. We're operating inside the self that God's created us to do. Now, I know it sounds simple. It is simple, but it's not easy. Not everything that's simple is easy. This is very difficult to do on a day-by-day, moment-by-moment basis, but it is the process of sanctification. It's the process of getting you home. That's what I got for you this week. We'll see you next week on My Garage Bible Study.